15 years ago, I ended my marriage because I found out my husband was cheating with a childhood friend and even had a child with her. This made me very upset and almost made me quit my job. But during that tough time, my current husband helped me and we made a happy home together. However, my happiness didn't last long. Recently, I saw my ex-husband for the first time in 15 years. He said mean things to me, like I must still be single because nobody would want to marry someone like me who couldn't have kids, but I surprised him by introducing him to my children. When I introduced my son, my ex-husband was shocked and scared. I told him about my life now. I'm Florence, 38 years old. I live with my 13-year-old son Max, my 11-year-old daughter Ava, and my husband David, who is the same age as me. Max is in middle school and going through a rebellious phase. He can be cheeky sometimes, but my husband David knows how to handle him. Ava loves makeup and fashion, and she knows how to get what she wants because she's the youngest and a girl. Max really cares about Ava, so when she jokes about not liking him if he's not nice to me, he quickly apologizes and promises to be good. He's charming and always knows how to make things fun. So, even though my life is busy, it's also full of joy. But there's something people might not know about me. I've been divorced once and am now happily married for the second time. I got divorced because my ex-husband, who I'll call Jack, did something really hurtful. It happened 15 years ago when we were both in college. We were happy together at first, talking about how much we wanted kids and imagining what it would be like to be parents. But even after trying for a while, we didn't get pregnant. Every month, when my period came, it caused tension between us. We tried to figure out why we couldn't have kids, spending a lot of money on treatments, but doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Despite this, my husband started getting frustrated and blaming me for our infertility. He'd say things like, "When will I ever become a father?" and make sarcastic comments that made me feel bad. He stopped helping around the house, saying it was my job because I couldn't have kids. He made me feel like our marriage was pointless because I couldn't fulfill my role as a woman. Afterwards, my husband's words got meaner. He'd say things like, "My sister is having her second baby already. Isn't that great? They're on their second, and we haven't even had our first." He'd look at me with a harsh expression, making fun of me and putting me down. He'd say, "If your body was normal, we have kids by now." I'd try to defend myself, saying we didn't know the reason for our infertility yet, but he'd just say, "It's always the woman's fault for not having babies. If I knew you couldn't have kids, I wouldn't have married you. You should feel guilty." His words hurt me a lot. On top of that, my in-laws would call, excitedly asking when they get a grandchild. At first, I'd try to brush it off, saying it takes time, but it didn't help. My mother-in-law started blaming me, saying I was useless for not having kids yet, especially since my sister-in-law had kids so easily. The pressure from them was overwhelming. One day, my friend Daisy invited me out. Jack, my ex-husband, had been busy with work, so he wasn't around much. That's when Daisy told me something shocking. She said, "I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I have something important to tell you, Florence. I've missed you too." "What's up, Daisy?" "Remember Grace? She was Jack's childhood friend. They grew up near each other and their families were close. She went to the same college as us and now works with me. Grace, the daughter of the CEO at my job, got her position through family connections. We didn't really hang out in college since we were in different groups, and even at work, we didn't talk much because we worked in different departments. My husband introduced me to her once, calling her his friend and asking me to get along with her. But Grace didn't seem to like me, so I avoided her. Daisy, my friend, told me something surprising about Grace. She said, "I think your husband and Grace are having an affair." I couldn't believe it. Daisy had seen them holding hands, not just like friends. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I think you should find out more," Daisy said, offering to help me talk about it. I had suspected Jack was cheating. He'd always come home late, saying he had to work more. He was never around on weekends, busy entertaining clients. Even though I had a feeling, I tried to ignore it. But after hearing Daisy's warning, I went straight to a detective agency. I wanted proof of his infidelity. Within a week, they had enough evidence. But I wasn't ready to divorce him yet. Despite everything, I still remembered the promises we made to each other. I needed time to decide. A few days later, I got home to find Jack sitting at the dinner table, which was unusual because he usually came home late. "Oh, you're home. I thought you'd be late again," I said sarcastically. "Yeah, sorry about that. I need to talk to you, he replied. Knowing about the affair, I braced myself for bad news. I want a divorce, he said. What? I was shocked. I realized he wasn't just fooling around, he was serious about Grace. Grace is pregnant. I'm going to marry her, he added. I couldn't believe it. He had always said Grace was just a friend. Jack didn't seem to think he did anything wrong. He even said, "My mom wants me to divorce you. She thinks Grace is better because she's prettier and can have kids." Hearing this hurt a lot. Tears filled my eyes as Jack left, saying he was going back to Grace. I was too hurt to stop him. Later, I got divorce papers in the mail, with a note from Grace asking me to divorce Jack. It felt like a slap in the face. I wanted to say, "No, you're the one who took my husband." But I realized arguing wouldn't change anything. I was left with so many questions. Why was I being blamed? I couldn't just accept the divorce quietly. Determined to stand up for myself, I used the evidence I gathered from the detective agency to start divorce mediation. A few days after filing, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard Grace, Jack's mistress, yelling at me. She was furious that I had started a lawsuit. I calmly explained that it was the right thing to do given the situation and that I knew about her inappropriate behavior. She demanded compensation, even though she was pregnant. Her harsh words hurt me deeply. I told her we could discuss everything officially during the divorce mediation. In the mediation, the court recognized Jack and Lee's relationship as infidelity based on the evidence. Jack tried to blame my infertility. The court didn't buy it because there was no proof of my infertility within just a year of marriage. In the end, I received $220,000 as alimony from Jack and $110,000 from Grace. After finalizing the divorce, I hoped to move on, but the aftermath was far from over. The affair between Jack, Grace, and me became gossip among our friends, especially since we all went to the same university. Shockingly, some rumors suggested I hid my infertility and tricked Jack into marrying me. Some friends even sympathized with Jack and Grace, which felt awful. The situation got worse at work because Lee, Grace's father, was my company's president. Grace portrayed herself as a victim, spreading lies about me hiding my infertility and demanding alimony while she was pregnant. Despite trying to ignore it, I faced backlash at work. My bosses favored Grace because of her influential family, and I was sidelined from important projects. Eventually, I felt forced to resign. While job hunting, another company recognized my skills and offered me a position. Here, I thrived beyond expectations. My new boss valued me for my abilities, unlike my previous workplace, which favored nepotism. I found myself drawn to this boss, who turned out to be my current husband, David. David was my rock during the tough times after my breakup with Jack. We spent a lot of time together, talking about everything from work to personal matters, and our bond grew into love. When David proposed, I was thrilled, but I was also scared of facing infertility again. I confessed this fear to him, and he reassured me, saying that he loved me no matter what and that having children wasn't the most important thing to him. Feeling truly happy and loved, I decided to marry David. Shortly after our wedding, we were blessed with our first child, Max, followed by our daughter, Aha. Despite the challenges of parenting, we were content and happy every day. Years later, at a friend's wedding, I unexpectedly saw my ex-husband for the first time in 15 years. I was startled to see him there, but then I remembered that the bride and groom were also our university friends, so it wasn't surprising that he was there too. I tried to ignore him as I walked by, but he called out to me loudly, catching my attention. "Hey, what's up?" Jack said loudly, possibly drunk, as he spoke to me. "Surprised to see you here, it's been a while. Looks like you've put on some weight, huh?" he added, spraying a bit as he talked. I silently rolled my eyes at his sarcastic comment. Then Jack called over his family, including Grace and her son. Grace laughed when she saw me and joked, "Wow, it's been ages. Have you been stress eating? You've gained some weight, huh? Life's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? And still no luck with having kids, right? Tough luck, huh?" Their rude comments left me speechless with shock. Then I noticed Grace's son blushing and looking down with embarrassment. He was quite handsome. I realized I hadn't introduced him yet. "This is my son," Grace proudly announced. "He's cute, right? Takes after me. And he's not just good looking, he's really smart too, a little genius. Looks like we're the only ones happy here, huh?" Jack and Grace laughed, proudly showing off their son. But I noticed something off about their son's expression. He seemed uncomfortable with his parents' behavior, growing increasingly dissatisfied with their mocking attitude. He must be a kind-hearted child, I thought to myself. But I didn't have time for them. Just as I was about to leave, Jack grabbed my arm tightly. "You divorced me because of infertility, yet you took money from us," he said, still holding on to a grudge from 15 years ago. Then Grace chimed in, "Yeah, you're infertile and single. Why do you need money? Families like us with children need it more. Give us back double the money you took." Their selfishness stunned me. Suddenly, Jack's son spoke up, pointing out, "Single means I'm married, right? But she's wearing a wedding ring on her left hand." Everyone's attention turned to my left hand, where I wore a wedding ring. Jack and Grace stared in shock. "You're married?" they exclaimed loudly, causing a scene. Feeling embarrassed by the scene Jack and Grace caused, I was unsure what to do. Suddenly, my son Max and daughter Ava appeared, concerned about my lateness. Ava, always outspoken, was joined by Max, who rarely spoke up so boldly. "Mom, you're late, and you have kids?" Max asked, surprising me with his directness. "Yes, I do. Let me introduce them. This is my son Max and my daughter Ava." Jack and Grace were shocked to see the children of the woman they thought couldn't have kids. Grace looked closely at my son, and after a moment, they began to speak in a more mature tone, though their voices sounded strained. They seemed curious about Max's uniform. "He came straight from school with my husband, so he's still in his uniform. And yes, he goes to that famous private middle school," I explained. "Max worked hard and wanted to try for it, so we let him take the exam. He passed and has been attending since this year." Indeed, Max excelled academically and was enrolled in a prestigious local school. "No way, he can't be your son," my daughter exclaimed, joining the conversation. "She plans to take the same school's exam next year," I added proudly. "Yeah, and Max is amazing. He won a violin contest," Ava chimed in. "Violin? I thought I recognized him. He was on TV recently," Grace exclaimed. "Oh, you saw that?" "Yes, he's been getting quite a bit of media attention lately. He was coming back from violin practice today," I explained. Grace and my ex-husband were speechless. "You were supposed to be infertile. How could you have children like this?" Jack protested. "We're all happy now, and that's what matters. Let's not involve each other anymore," I said firmly, ready to leave with my kids. Just then, my husband David arrived. Jack's face went pale at the sight of him. "Is your husband by any chance the young Mr. Lopes who became the president of Resident last year?" Jack asked, recognizing David. Indeed, David was the president of a company that had ties with Grace's father's firm. I had switched jobs and met David there. Last year, he was appointed as the president of the company, recommended by the then president. "Ah, I'm Lopez," my husband introduced himself, confused by the tense atmosphere. Sensing the tension, Max explained, "We heard these people calling Mom infertile and fat. So, Ava and I came to help her out." I realized they must have overheard my ex-husband and his wife insulting me earlier. My husband's expression hardened as he realized the situation. "I heard rumors, but I didn't expect a lack of decency," he said firmly. Jack started making excuses, trying to flatter my husband, while Grace protested. They began arguing, and their son, who had been silent, finally spoke up. "Let's stop this already. It's terrible how you're talking about this lady, calling her fat and infertile, and demanding money back. It's embarrassing for me," he said tearfully. "And what's this about an affair? Am I a child born from an affair? Am I an unwanted child?" he continued, his voice full of anguish. Jack and Grace became visibly unsettled. "Oh well, it's not like that." Grace tried to defend herself, but she couldn't ignore the stares from the other guests. Blushing deeply, she looked down in embarrassment. Though I couldn't forgive Jack and Grace, I admired their son for his sense of justice and kindness. Wanting to support him, I was about to speak, but my husband spoke up first. "Thank you for standing up for my wife and defending her from insults. You're a kind child," my husband said, patting the boy's head. With a smile, I decided to speak up too. "But maybe I am a bit chubby. However, that's not the point. Actually, I'm pregnant," I announced, gently stroking my belly. I was already pregnant with our third child. At that time, I was on maternity leave. Turning to the tear-filled eyes of the boy, I continued, Your mom also nurtured you in her belly with great care. You're not an unwanted child. Your mom and dad love you and are proud of you, right? Looking at Jack and Grace, I waited for their response. The boy looked at them hopefully and asked, "Really?" Jack and Grace quickly nodded, assuring him, "Yes, yes. You're our pride. You're very important to us." Seeing the boy smile, I felt a sense of relief. "Let's get back to our seats for now." "It's a day of celebration," I suggested. Each family returned to their seats, and the chaotic scene came to an end. The wedding concluded successfully, and as we headed to the station, Grace and Jack approached us with their son, holding hands. Max and Ava had been protective of me, but my husband chuckled and calmed them down. Grace and Jack offered their apologies. "Sorry about everything. We truly regret our actions today." "Thank you for earlier," they said. It was the first apology I had received from them in 15 years. Perhaps having a child had changed them a bit. I just laughed and said, "Really? After all this time?" With that, I turned my back on them and began to walk away. Max offered to carry my bags, taking the one marked with maternity. Ava cheerfully dragged a coat over my shoulders. Despite their young age, they were looking out for me during my pregnancy. "All right, tonight's dinner will be Dad's homemade hamburgers, Max and Ava's favorite." "Thank you." I vowed to protect the smiles of my beloved family, leaving behind the pains of the past.